Well, thank you so much for being with us here on Morning Live. Focusing now on the Gauteng ANC and the Provincial Executive Committee yesterday failing to release the personal protective equipment tender report on the fate of those implicated in the controversy. I must just indicate very quickly that we are going to speak to the Gauteng ANC Secretary, Mr. Jacob Kawe, but that will happen after 8. He is currently handing over a report. So we will come to the ANC on this matter, but first we'll speak to what has happened thus far and get some analysis. Now, the meeting has been ongoing since Saturday and trying to deal with, among other things, the report by the Integrity Commission relating to the multi-million rand PPE tenders. And those implicated include Gauteng Health MEC, Dr. Bandile Masuku, his wife, Loyiso Masuku, who's a member of the mayoral committee in the city of Johannesburg, and presidential spokesperson Khusela Diko. The outcome of the investigation was expected to be announced in a press briefing that was scheduled for yesterday. It is understood, however, that the discussions deadlocked following disagreements on the outcome of the report that has been found to have inconsistencies. Now, to discuss this, we're joined by political analyst Ralph Mathekga. Ralph, good morning and thanks for being with us on Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to Morning Live viewers. Thanks for inviting me.
So a whole weekend spent on this particular matter, still no outcome. To be fair, though, it's not the only matter that the provincial body is seized with. But what should we make of the fact that this particular matter is still held up?
Well, Sakina, it was bound to be like this. We know that it has been quite common for members of the ANC to challenge their internal processes. So it's not a surprise that we are seeing members rallying within Gauteng, actually trying to challenge the findings. This is, they are raising questions as to whether the correct procedure was raised and whether there's been consistency in terms of the finding. And Sakina, I agree with them, but for different reasons. And let me quickly state my reason. I agree with them that there is a question of the procedure that is being followed by the Integrity Committee of the ANC as to what kind of procedure, what kind of representation. I mean, in all essence, Sakina, the internal functioning of the ANC Integrity Commission is not available to scrutiny outside the ANC. So from that point of view, you can say that we don't know what procedure are followed and so forth. But that is only what can be said by you and I, not members of the ANC. Members of the ANC are privy to internal processes. They know what is happening internally. They've got no right to come out and say that we feel this lacks legitimacy, this has not been expedited properly. And at the end of the day, for South Africans outside the ANC, this is an indication of the limitation that internal processes of the ANC are confronted with in their attempt to fight against corruption. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't really care much, Sakina, what is happening within the Integrity Commission of the ANC. I care a lot about what is happening within the NPA. But it is a concern to see ANC members disrespecting their own procedures, actually behaving as if they're outsiders to the ANC. This is what I find disingenuous about the response of some within Gauteng to this report.
It isn't, foreign, though, because it's not the first time that ANC members have seemingly disrespected their own internal processes. So looking at this particular incident and the pushback that we are told is existent within the structures, taking the case of Masuku, for example, who is reportedly not accepting the outcome, and I say reportedly because we don't know for sure what exactly is going on, but if there is pushback, for example, and people are challenging the report, what does that say about the deployees of the African National Congress? Because surely if they are not willing to abide by the instruction of the party, what are we to read into this as outsiders?
I mean, Sakina, you're asking a very critical question. What does that say about the deployees? They've gone rogue, actually, the deployees of the ANC. And I think it is very clear that the ANC is failing to control its own deployees. I mean, in all fairness, integrity within the ANC cannot be assessed in the same, what one can say, process of assessing legal liability in the court outside the ANC. When we talk about integrity within the ANC, in my mind, the way in which I see it, even if I'm not a member of the ANC, reason dictate to me that when someone its decision is being reviewed by the Integrity Commission, where someone is found not to have exercised caution as it is required of members of the ANC. I think from that point of view, the Integrity Commission should have the right to sanction their members. But look at what is happening here, Sakina. You have members of the ANC actually questioning their own internal process, almost actually saying that this report from this commission should not determine what happens within the state institutions. It is quite unfair because they are now, I would say, contesting their own internal processes, which they've played part in disregarding over the years. That is why it also says that the whole internal process of the ANC, they've actually collapsed, Sakina. That is why those who want accountability are looking into state institutions as opposed to what is happening internally within the ANC. As for members of the ANC, though, this is just a revelation that they themselves have lost confidence in their own internal processes. It's a shame, Sakina.
And then, Ralph, we're talking about a whole weekend of deliberations after a party structure has sat and came to a conclusion. They came up with findings and a report. And then you spend a whole weekend deliberating the findings of that report, just deliberating, discussing, and not necessarily at this point, it would seem, about the implementation of what that particular structure has come up with. What does that tell us about, once again, the issue of factions within the ANC and whether those factional battles are now resulting in cadre deployment becoming a headache for the party?
It is concerning indeed that so much time is being devoted to deliberating on the findings instead of releasing those findings and making sure that they are being implemented. And again, I would put it out to you, Sakina. I mean, this is just a political management of the findings. It has got nothing to do with the substantive matters from where I stand. People are actually finding a way to poke holes in the story regarding how this report was compiled. And I think the biggest consideration here, it's about the political implications. I mean, people are saying that there is inconsistency when it comes to the findings of Dr. Masuku, that actually it is inconsistent to say that he failed to exercise caution, he failed to exercise accountability. And I think for me, from where I stand, it is the high bar, it is the high requirement of a political leader within the ANC that they should not only be expected to just look around, they are expected to act and make sure that impropriety does not happen. But that test, Sakina, seems not to be allowed within the ANC, and it points to one issue. It points to political management of the whole process. People are going to ask questions as to whether is this about the strength of the ANC in Gauteng? And again, if it's about the strength of the ANC in Gauteng, people will also be asking the question as to whether the big consideration perhaps is about the elective conference coming. It's not about the substantive matters of impropriety. It's about its implications on factions within the ANC and how that shape up to the elective conference. It is quite sad that factionalism within the ANC have become an institution on its own, even competing with institutions such as the Integrity Commission of the ANC, Sakina.
But how far gone is the party, Ralph? The recent ANC internal report that was titled Provincial Reports, Criminal and Provincial Cases, that's been met with defiance as well. Does the ANC have the guts to actually implement whatever disciplinary action is recommended at any point effectively? Does the party actually have the guts to do that?
The answer is a resounding no, Sakina, because in the last few years, we have seen the internal mechanism of the ANC collapsing, been taken by factions. It is so difficult that you find someone who is just standing on the basis of principle within the ANC, Sakina. I mean, even those that make sense within the ANC, you listen to some individuals who are trying to take a principled position on this, you look at them and you end up with the conclusion that says that, alas, they just come from a good faction. At the end of the day, you end with a faction within the ANC, and the internal functioning of the party are not immune, are not protected from these factional maneuvers, unfortunately. And you're asking, where does this all end? It ends in state institution. There will be no credibility as far as decisions within the internal processes of ANC are concerned. The only thing that will make people happy regarding anti-corruption is not the functioning of the Integrity Commission. It is the functioning of the Special Investigation Unit. It is the NPA. It is the police outside the ANC. Even the ANC, I think they are aware that they need rescue through outside state institutions as opposed to their own internal institutions. Those internal institutions, Sakina, they have failed dismally.
So to that point, it's been clear that there has been this implosion from within. If you look at what's happening in the Northwest Province, for example, the ANC in that province caught up in disagreement because of the recall of municipal mayors by the organization. The PEC in the Northwest saying they're not going anywhere. These implosions are now becoming very public spats. So how does the ANC actually move forward from this, if they can at all?
I mean, Sakina, ideally, the ANC will need to sit down and actually read the Riot Act and actually say to its members, these are internal processes of the party. They've been undertaken fairly and openly. You have been allowed representation. It's high time that members of the ANC have to subject themselves to internal processes of the party. But unfortunately, the battle are so outlined and the stakes are so high, Sakina, that it is going to be difficult to find people who just support the internal processes of the ANC just on the basis of principle. Each group that support this, they stand to gain politically out of dealing with another faction. That is just how far gone this is. So there is just no recourse within the ANC. The only recourse is outside the ANC. That is why you are likely to see a member of the ANC taking the decision of their own integrity committee to court, challenging it because they are saying that it has got no bearing within the state. That has happened before, Sakina. We have seen ANC members going to court, challenging internal processes and saying that they lack legitimacy, they lack integrity, they lack the respect that they are meant to have. And it is just where the party is. It cannot help itself. I don't know. I'm trying to be very hopeful, hoping that one organizational meeting, one summit of the ANC will restore things to normality. But I'm also aware that the problem has become part of the institutional culture within the ANC. Factionalism, Sakina, is not a pastime within the ANC. It is an institutionalized phenomena that is intertwined with the battle on the decision as to how to allocate resources in South Africa. It is so deep that I think the commitment that people have to factionalism is beyond the commitment that they have to the ANC itself. This is just how the ANC find itself, and I don't see them rescuing themselves out of this, Sakina.
Ralph Mathekga, thank you so much for that. Political analyst Ralph Mathekga talking to us about challenges within the ruling party as it is yet to release its report on the multi-billion rand PPE tenders, amongst other issues. And of course, we will be speaking to ANC Secretary in Gauteng, Jacob Hawe, about what is actually happening here. And there has been an update on that particular story as well. And the ANC in Gauteng has now extended Masuku and Diko's leave of absence. We'll get clarity and confirmation about that from the ANC Secretary in Gauteng. Do stay with us. We need to take a quick break though.